Hello. As much as I wanted to do a specific, Christmas themed book for my December release, I did not have the time to put anything like that together. So I'm doing the next best thing, which is comparing Johnny Cade in The Outsiders to Jesus. I'm going to explain this in the video, but I'm not religious. I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything. This is just the kind of story that I was raised with. And this is the most applicable theme for the holiday season that I feel knowledgeable enough to actually speak on. And it's a shorter video as well because there's a lot of stuff going on in my personal life right now. And it's actually all good. I'm having a great fucking time, believe it or not. I know this is my first quote, short video, but the feedback I got on my icebreaker video was so awesome and sweet and kind that I may or may not stick with my long form content despite telling everybody that I was going to shorten it. Videos might be an every other month thing or maybe an every 6 weeks thing. It really is just going to depend on what I have going on. And I know I'm not big enough to even warrant an announcement like this, but I just wanted to clarify things just in case. Maybe if a handful of people were looking for things or wanted to know, now you know. And if you don't give a shit, totally fair. But yeah, that's just a small little update for everybody. Thank you so much for the response to my icebreaker video. That was so sweet and it has warmed my heart immensely after such a difficult year. I feel so happy, But yeah, thanks for 36 subscribers. I need to make cookies this weekend for it. So hopefully you'll see them soon. Do you know that it's illegal to graduate high school in the state of Oklahoma without having read The Outsiders? Okay, that's a lie. But what isn't a lie is the cultural impact that Oklahoma native S.E. Hinton has had on young adult fiction and pop culture in general. I mean, who hasn't heard the phrase stay gold? And let's not forget the movie where some big time names in the industry got their first roles. Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, C. Thomas Howell, Tom fucking Cruise. Need I go on? Diane Lane? Hello? The movie itself is such an iconic piece of media that you can tour the house that it was shot in. If you're ever passing through or near Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you've got $10 to spend, go there. Seriously. Born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, S.E. Hinton wrote her first novel when she was only 15 years old. According to her, the inspiration for The Outsiders came after a close friend of hers had been jumped by a group of what we would consider preppy teens today, all because he was a, quote, greaser, a young kid of a lower financial class who usually has greasy hair and a ne'er-do-well reputation. I feel like gang member isn't really the right word to use because it implies a degree of organization that the boys in The Outsiders didn't really have. And I do mean boys. The oldest of the main characters is only 20 years old. The short and dirty is this. The Outsiders is a book that follows the main character, Ponyboy Curtis, yes, that's his real name, and his ragtag group of greaser friends as they navigate heightened tensions between them and the socias or socialites. The stakes get incredibly high, eventually resulting in the death of kids on both sides of this long-standing class warfare. The reason, well, one of the reasons this book is so popular is the way S.E. Hinton wrote these characters. Every single one has a distinct personality, a life story, a purpose within the greater narrative, and a lesson to teach the audience. You have Ponyboy, the main character and the narrator. He's 14 years old and he has a promising future ahead of him. At least that's what his brothers, Derry and Soda Pop, yes, that's his real name, think. Derry's the oldest brother and the oldest character of the main crew. He had to take on the role of both parents after the boy's mother and father died in a car accident some months before the events of this novel. Derry's whole thing is keeping the family together and making sure that his kid brothers aren't taken away from him and put into a boys' home somewhere, which I'm sure is a notoriously awful place to be. Soda Pop's the middle child at 16, and as such, he often acts as a mediator between Derry and Ponyboy when things get a bit testy. Funnily enough, Soda Pop's personality is effervescent, really. Soda Pop's personality is effervescent, really. He's quite bubbly and happy-go-lucky, and it's a pretty severe contrast to his tortured inner world that's only revealed in slivers throughout this narrative. Then there's Dallas, or Dally Winston. He's like the toughest of the tough, having run around with some gangs in New York for a time, all by the age of 17. He's always being thrown in jail for something, and he doesn't particularly care who knows. If anything, he's proud of his lengthy rap sheet and really leans into the stereotype that his social situation has placed him in. Keith 2-Bit Matthews is an 18-year-old smartass who loves to be crass and get the final word in. He's just like me for real. And really, he is the guy to thank for all of the shit that goes down in this less than 200-page long book. It's not like I blame him. Clearly, as a character, neither he nor anyone else would be aware of just how far his mouth would let things spiral out of control. Oh, he really is just like me for real. And finally, there's Johnny Cade, Jesus Christ himself. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bees, what the hell? Can you give the everything is Jesus shtick a break already? No, I don't wanna. Before I continue, let me make one thing super duper clear. I am not religious, though I used to be. I'm not interested in converting anybody or spreading the word, as it were. I think that's icky. I'm only making this analysis from a purely literary perspective. The Christian Bible, for the purposes of this video, will be treated as myth. If that offends you, I'm sorry, but you should probably hop off to a different video now, okay? Monkey covering eyes emoji. Thanks. I'm actually kind of shocked at how little content there is likening Johnny Cade to the Christian Jesus. And I mean, it's not like the similarities were intentional, at least that's what I gathered from a few of S.E. Hinton's Twitter posts. In a response to a tweet I can't see because I don't have or want an account, she says, "You won't believe how many letters I get asking if Johnny Cade was a Christ figure." And when asked why she killed whatever character, she gives the same hilarious response: "Because I am a stone cold bitch," which implies to me that this is actually one of those real life circumstances where the curtains were just blue. And that makes sense. I really hope what I'm about to say doesn't come off wrong, and if it does, I am so sorry in advance. I believe S.E. Hinton is a brilliant writer, and she's one of my favorites, right next to Ray Bradbury. However, I don't really buy the notion that a 15-year-old's mind, no matter how literarily inclined, is wired to make cuts this deep on purpose. Key phrase, on purpose. I think it's more possible that the allusions are accidental and I'm just a pretentious bitch who loves mythology and also making pieces fit where they probably shouldn't in the first place. I'm aware that it's a stretch, okay? I just need y'all to be flexible. Consider the following. Johnny Cade was last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that has been kicked too many times and lost in a crowd of strangers, you will have Johnny. He was the youngest, smaller than the rest, with a slight build. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating he got from the Socias didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet. Everyone's kid brother. There are a lot of keywords and phrases here. Youngest, smaller, slight build, puppy, they all imply a degree of meek innocence, completely free of sin. He's just a kid, and he hasn't done anything to deserve the beating he got prior to the start of this narrative. The Christian Jesus, for those who don't know, was said to be the child of God, born of the Virgin Mary, who became the ultimate sacrifice for Christians. And in his death, all of humanity's sins were forgiven for like the rest of eternity or something like that. Or at least until the rapture. I think. I don't know. I was raised Methodist. We didn't really do the fire and brimstone shit, so the later books of the Bible weren't as vital to my church's teachings. One of the key teachings of most Christian denominations is that this Jesus guy and everyone else are all children of the big man himself. And yeah, while that would make Jesus everyone's brother, it definitely wouldn't make him their kid brother, right? Sure. But only if you think about it in terms of linear age. One of the things about this Jesus guy, one of the things about the Christian Jesus is that he never sinned. And depending on who you ask, the only beings free of sin are children who don't know any better. Though some other denominations have this lovely little concept called original sin, in which a child's inability to conceptualize right or wrong doesn't ultimately matter. They're born sinful creatures because some assholes ruined it for humanity however many thousands of years ago. All over a fruit. But I don't like that interpretation personally. Call me a bleeding heart if you must, but I don't think it's right to assign moral standards to a kid who doesn't even know what morality is to begin with. So if we're strictly talking about age, then fine. Jesus isn't anyone's kid brother, just like Johnny is. But also this book was written in the 60s, so Johnny would also be older than most of us tuning in right now. So checkmate. No, but for real, when speaking purely conceptually, the comparison is sound. Johnny's an innocent, just like J-Dog. Now, something that might not hold up is Johnny's home life. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him except when she was hacked off at something, and then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at our house. There are two ways to go about this. One, Johnny's parents are a representation of those who wanted Jesus dead, which is less sound, and two, Johnny's parents' behaviors are a reflection of the modern Christian's carelessness towards the religion itself, and thus Jesus by extension. I mean, do I really need to explain that second point? You can't even go outside without some asshole with Mark 12:30-31 in their Instagram bio antagonizing minorities, which, I mean, I suppose it would track since these people seem to hate themselves and others, but moving on. Jesus' worldly parents, Mary and Joseph, aren't really mentioned much in the Bible. It's widely assumed that Joseph himself died while Jesus was young, and although Mary is mentioned a few times after the story of his birth, there's never any interaction of importance between parent and child. So, I mean, both of these books broadly lack any scenes in which child and parents interact. And sure, maybe the circumstances aren't entirely the same, but at the most basic level, both boys lack a relationship with their folks on the page. And for me, that's significant enough to count. Later on in the book, Ponyboy and Johnny are laying out under the stars in an empty parking lot. They get to talking about their lots in life, how it isn't fair, this socioeconomic game they've all been placed in and are forced to play as the underdog regardless, and they're absolutely right. But something Johnny said here really stuck out to me, and I normally wouldn't think twice of it, but looking at it through the lens of this boy is Jesus, I can't take much more. Johnny spoke my own feelings. I'll kill myself or something. And I'm not trying to be funny here. This isn't fully a joke, though it is a bit flippant. Jesus' death is a lot like the Christian God killing himself. I mentioned the Holy Trinity in one of my other videos, but maybe this is the first time someone's watching my videos, so I want to go over it again. The Holy Trinity is a Christian concept in which the one God presents capital H himself through three different entities: the Father, the Son, that would be Jesus, and the Holy Spirit or Holy Ghost. But the three entities aren't the same, even though they derive their own power from the same source. I guess a similar enough example might be something like this. God is an extension cord / surge protector. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are three kitchen appliances plugged into this extension cord surge protector thing. They work independently, but their power source is the same. Make sense? I think that's actually the most solid explanation I've ever given for anything ever. But this alone might not be enough to prove anything until you consider the omniscience of the Christian God. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 46, verses 9-10, we read, "Remember the former things long past, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is no one like capital M me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things which have not been done, saying, my plan will be established and I will accomplish all my good pleasure." Pairing this with the guidance of this Holy Trinity schema, it becomes incredibly apparent that the death of the Christian Jesus is literally God killing himself. He knew it would happen. He planned for it. He chose himself as his proverbial sacrificial lamb. He offed himself. Now, jumping back into the narrative, shortly after the I want to KMS exchange with Ponyboy, Johnny kills a Soch, which should totally invalidate any notion that he's a Christ figure, right? And that's a keen observation. Definitely the right question to ask, you little smarty pants you, but walk with me here. Consider the Soches, the rich pretty boys, the mean assholes who exemplify almost everything wrong with the world. And they get away with it too. Their sins are left unchecked until something happens that throws their worlds off kilter, that is. And it isn't like Johnny killed this Soch for no good reason. It was purely in self-defense. He and Ponyboy were literally under attack when this murder occurred, with one guy almost drowning our narrator in a freezing fountain. Similarly to how Jesus had to, quote, vanquish the concept of sin so that humanity's souls more or less wouldn't die, Johnny had to vanquish one of those Soches to save his buddy from dying at all. It's a much more physical manifestation of the concept, yeah, but the metaphor still holds water. Or walks on it. After Johnny Cade totally murderalizes that Soch guy, Bob is his name, I think, he and Ponyboy go into hiding knowing that the oinkers will be looking for them come morning. You know who also went into hiding when he was being antagonized and chased? You know it. Mr. Jesus. In the book of Luke, a whole group of people got mad at the guy and chased him out of his own hometown. The reason isn't the same, though. So in this story, Jesus has come back to the place of his childhood in Nazareth and is more or less giving a sermon that affirms that he himself is like the Messiah or God's chosen one. And the people who have known this guy all their lives since infanthood are incredulous. You can't be him, you'll never be him type shit. And he goes on to say something to the effect of no prophet is accepted in their homelands, or or something. It makes the crowd upset, and they try to go after the guy and stone him to death, so he escapes and goes into hiding, slipping through the ranks of the angry mob without being noticed, cloaked in the invisibility of God, I suppose. Another time, some other people accuse him of being a demon, and Jesus is like, yo, I am not the one saying these cool things about me. That's God himself blessing me, so like, deal with it. Like, listen to the response. Literally, in this story, he says, if I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know him, I know him. If I said I did not, I would be a liar like you, but I do know him and obey his word. What a diva. But yeah, anyway, Jesus, Johnny, both fugitives, both hiding from people who want them dead or otherwise imprisoned. There's a little part in The Outsiders that reminded me of something else Jesus related, and it's a super minor part at that. You'll see what I mean, just walk with me here. Or let me carry you. So the two boys hop onto a train to Windrixville to skip town, basically, and the book reads, quote, I was hardly awake when Johnny and I leaped off the train into a meadow. Not until I landed in the dew and got a wet shock did I realize what I was doing. Johnny must have woke me up and told me to jump, but I didn't remember it. Now compare it with this well-known Christian poem. One night I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord. Scenes from my life flashed across the sky. In each, I noticed footprints in the sand. Some there were 2 sets of footprints, other times there was only one. During the low periods of my life, I could only see 1 set of footprints, so I said, you promised me, Lord, that you would walk with me always. Why, when I have needed you most, have you not been there for me? The Lord replied, the times when you have seen only 1 set of footprints, my child, is when I carried you. Now, did Johnny physically carry Ponyboy here? No, but let's be real. The poem is also metaphorical anyway. No physical carrying ever needed to happen for this to be a sound comparison. Ponyboy doesn't remember Johnny cueing him to hop off the train, but he found himself in the grass regardless. The narrator of the poem doesn't remember their God being with them through certain parts of their life, and yet capital H, he was. In fact, it's implied in the poem that God is the only reason this person made it to where they are. And without Johnny, Ponyboy wouldn't have jumped off the train. He wouldn't be where he is, literally. So the boys hide out in an abandoned church outside of town. They're doing okay enough for themselves, as okay as teenage fugitives can do, really. I mean, seriously. Dallas gives them some money to get by, and Johnny goes and buys some peroxide, 2 loaves of bread, a fuck ton of bologna, some matches, a bar of soap, a deck of cards, multiple candy bars, I'm assuming a carton of cigarettes, and a copy of Gone with the Wind. They hide away until Dallas comes by with some updates, but nothing super important, really. Not for the purposes of this video, at least. The boys continue hiding out in the church until one day a fire erupts from somewhere. When they escape the building, they're met with a group of kids and their chaperones on some kind of picnic or something. I don't know. I'm mostly working off of memory here. Anyway, a couple of the kids are trapped inside, so of course they have to go back in to save them. The roof starts caving in and Johnny pushes Ponyboy out of the way of a flaming 2x4 falling from the sky. Unfortunately, Johnny himself gets caught beneath it. It's a very intense scene, but they both make it out of the church alive when they're rushed to the hospital. Ultimately, Johnny Cade does pass away due to complications from the injuries he sustained from the fire. His final words, stay gold. In Christianity, it's widely accepted that the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus are what provide Christians with a path to salvation despite their sins. Similarly, Johnny's death serves as the catalyst for change between the greasers and Socs, ending in a sort of truce, albeit temporary, that stopped the fighting. That might have actually been the Rumble now that I'm thinking back on it. The 2 events happened right after one another, so in my brain they're linked, and I just spent a long ass time writing the script, so we're just rolling with it, okay? Of course, just like Jesus' death didn't stop people from sinning afterwards, Johnny's death didn't entirely stop the 2 dueling gangs from continuing their warfare against one another. However, what his death did do was awaken Ponyboy and another Soc, Randy, to the realization that all the fighting was pointless and that changes had to be made from within. See, the individuals in the narrative are more or less powerless in the face of such rigid and long-standing social constructs like class, race, etc. However, one person looking inside themselves and recognizing the humanity of their peers can settle their inner turmoil and thus result in less outward aggression against the other. Apply snowball theory and bam, peace on earth and goodwill toward men. In certain denominations of Christianity, the same type of logic can be applied. Because Jesus died as the ultimate earthly sacrifice, any and all who accept his teachings into their hearts will be saved from a life of eternal suffering in like hell or purgatory or something, depending on who you ask, of course. When using Jesus' teachings in the Bible to self-reflect on one's own sinful nature, individuals can choose to become more Christ-like in the hopes of making the world a better place and leading by example. Other denominations, though, take it a step further and mandate missionary work. Of course, they like like to frame it as some kind of altruistic measure when in reality it's just diet colonialism, but that's a heavier topic for some more qualified people to discuss. All in all, it's no wonder why S.E. Hinton is so consistently asked whether or not Johnny's meant to be a Christ figure. With the U.S.'s culture so entwined with Christianity... With the US's culture so entwined with Christianity, it seems as if we're all primed to either create those connections on purpose when creating anything or seek them out regardless of the author's intent. You know, in the same way that you notice more people driving your kind of car when you're in possession of it, it's everywhere. And so we look for it everywhere. And who knows, maybe in this age of evangelical Christian nationalism that's plaguing the country, those who serve a more benevolent creator will seek him anywhere, even in the outsiders. After all, Jesus himself was an outsider too, you know, or so the Bible says. That's all I have for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Next video will probably be out in February. Again, it'll be less of a synopsis and more of a my thoughts on video because this book is like 1,000 pages long and I do not have it in me to pump that kind of content out in 4 weeks. I'm already pushing it with this deadline, but I've been busy settling into my new place and it's been so wonderful getting to do all of that. Anyway, let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it's the most wonderful time and that kind of rhymed of the year. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'll see you next time.